Taf Lamed Amud Aleph, 4 lines from the top. We learned in the Mishnah that the Kohen Gadol, when he relieves himself, he has to be toivel the mikveh before doing the avodah. The Gemara is now going to discuss halachas that are related to a person doing something, reciting Krishma, in a case where there is something unclean. So, if a person he has tsaya, excrement, in its place, in the where it normally is. Also, likras Krishma. It's also for him to read Krishma. He's considered to be in not a state of cleanliness, and he can't say Krishma. So, what's the case? Either near is if it's exposed, if it's on the exterior, so pshita, of course, he can't recite Krishma in that situation. And either loy nearest, and if it's not nearest, loy netar l'malachei shoras. The Torah was not given to malachei shoras. If it's interior, it's inside the body, then loy netar l'malachei shoras. People are only human; they're not angels, and they can't avoid that type of situation. How can you say that they can't read Krishma? The Gemara answers loy tzricha d'yeshiv nearest. No, the case is talking as follows. We're talking in a case, the yeshiv nearest. If he'd be sitting, then it would be exposed. When he's standing, it's not visible. So it's close enough to the exterior that if he would be sitting, it would be visible, but not when he's standing. The Papa says that nevertheless, it's also likras Krishna. Why is that different from the case of soya excrement on his flesh? Ditmar, we learned sayol b'sarai, or even if it's not on his body, but his hand is in a basic kise where there is soy. Rav Huna Amar muter likras Krishma. Rav Huna says it's muter, and Rav Chisda Amar also likras Krishma, and Rav Chisda says it's awesome. So, what is the machlokes over here? How do we understand it? So, firstly, as a way of introduction, the Teis Rishonim says that we're not talking over here when it's exposed. We're talking over here when it's covered. It's covered by the clothing. If there was a visible tzaya, if it was exposed, then everyone would agree that it's also to say Krishma in a place that's not clean, where it would be when it's not covered. So, we're talking over here. Firstly, we're talking where it's covered. Now, so there's a basic machlokes and over here when we say lagabe Krishma or davar shebekadusha, where are the isurim? Where do they apply? So Rav Huna says that we learn out. It says kol haneshama talakol. When you have to praise Hashem, so kol haneshama. So it has to be kol Hashem, has to be in a state of kedusha, but that's kol haneshama. It's only where it's dealing with the things that have to do with the neshama, with the nose, the mouth, that come into the interior of the person, interior of the body. So therefore, if it's exposed, he can't say Krishma. But if it's not exposed, and then Rav Huna says, if his mouth, his nose are in an area, so for instance, if his head is into the basic kisei, then he can't say Krishma. But if he was stuck his hand into the basic kisei, and he himself, his mouth, his face is outside the basic kisei, then Rav Huna says you could say Krishma, because there's no chasaron of kol neshama, because his neshama is outside. But that is Rav Huna, but Rav Chisda says, no, we learn out from, it says, Kol atzmoisai taimarna Hashem michamaycha. Kol atzmoisai mean all of my limbs. Therefore, there can't be a davar that's unclean, there can't be tzaya on any of his limbs, even if it's covered. But in any event, the machlokes over here is whether it's on one of his limbs, or if it's exposed to his mouth, to his face. But as from the Ritva and from the Marine Soretz Mashma, then if it's in a place when it's not visible, so if the person would stand, it would not be visible. It's not considered to be neither on his limbs and not in his neshama. It's not exposed to his face. And as the Marine Masechet says, meaning if it's in its natural place, even if it's even if it would be visible when he sits down, but it's still considered to be b'mekayma, and therefore it's not on his limbs, and there's no chasar of kol atzmaisai, and it's not exposed to his face. So they would agree, they both agree that it should be muter. So it seems to be the Rav Papa is like neither of them. The Gemara says no, b'mekayma nafish zuma. In its place, in the mekayma, it's nafish zuma. It has a exceedingly foul odor. It's considered to be more repulsive. Where are they talking about? Where's the machlekes, Rav Huna, Rav Chisda? It's when it's not in ois v'demakan. It's not b'mekayma. So there they have a machlekes. But mekayma, the nafish zuma, everyone would agree. Shalei b'mekayma, the life and the nafish zuma, the machlekes is only if it's not in its place. It's not in annas. It's not so vile. It's not so repulsive. There they have a machlekes. Is it even on the limbs or only exposed to the face? But they would agree over here in the case of Rav Papa that it's b'mekayma, that it's more disgusting, so therefore would be asur. So we mentioned also in the Mishnah about if there's mei raglaim. So Tan Rabbanon, halacha b'suda, halacha is mentioned in the Suda, Adam Yetzel, lahashtin maim, if in the course of a meal, a person has to leave the meal to urinate, he has to wash one hand, the hand that became, that touched the mei raglaim, he has to wash that hand, and then he can come in. He doesn't have to wash both his hands. He doesn't have to wash both his hands. He only has to wash one of his hands. However, in our Mishnah, we learned that in the Kohen Gadol, that if he relieves himself from mei raglaim, he has to do kiddush yadayim raglaim. He has to do both. So the Seach Yitzchak explains that's legabi the avoid in the base of Mikdash. He has to do both hands regardless of what he touched. Even if he only touched with one hand, he has to do both. But in a Hilchos Suda, so the hand that touched the mei raglaim needs a rachitza. You have to wash it, but not the other hand. However, the Brisa continues, however, it's diber im chavera v'hifleg, if he was outside and he talked for an extended period of time, he was talking with his friends, so there we say it's considered to be a heschadas, and therefore he didn't keep the shmira of his hands, he didn't maintain watchfulness, a shmira of his hands, and therefore we say, if it's diber im chavera v'hifleg, if he's there for an extended period of time, he delayed his return, then he has to wash both hands. Now another halacha has a kushu noital when he washes his hand lo yitam lebachutz v'yikones, he shouldn't wash outside b'bnei chashad because people will suspect that he didn't wash. So he has to make a point of washing when he comes inside. Wash inside. Al nichnas v'yashev b'mekayma, and he should come and go back to his place. V'noital shtei yodav, and wash both his hands at the meal, so people see that he's washing, so they know he's washed, and then pass the picture to the other guests. So that he makes a point that they should show that he is that he washed his hands. Omer of Chisda said, where is it that we said that he has to wash inside, he should not wash outside? Lo yamen elo lishtos. That's only when he is coming in to drink. He's returning to drink, but not to eat. Aval lechol, if he's coming in, is returning to the meal to eat, then there's no requirement to wash inside. He can wash outside. He can also wash outside. Why is that? Because the whole reason that we're saying that he has to wash inside bnei chashat, that people might suspect he's not washing. But under these circumstances, that over here, then the Meida Yadiyah Danina Daita. For a person knows that he would not touch the food without washing first. So we would not suspect him for that. So they would assume that certainly he washed outside, so therefore there's no requirement to wash inside. Amar of Nachbar Yitzchak Vano, he said about himself that even if he only returns to drink, therefore also he does not have to wash inside, he can wash outside, because because people know that he is very delicate in nature, they know that he's very finicky in particular, and they know that he would have washed his hand, they would not have suspected him, so therefore he does not have to wash inside, he can wash outside. Zok the Mishnah, Ein Adam Nichlas Lazor Lavoida, a person cannot come to the Azara. Some are not geiris the avoida, that when it says lavoida, because it's not only that if he's coming to avoida, this we have the following requirement. Even if he's not coming to avoida, so Rashi says it's lav davka, because you can't come to the Azara at all without the following requirement. In Adam Nichlas Lazor Lavoida Ela Tohor Afilu Tohor, rather, even if he's Tohor Achi Yidbo. A person cannot come into the Azara, even if he knows he's Tohor. He has to be Toivel. He has to be Toivel before he comes in. Chamesh Tfilos Vasar Kiddushin Toivel Kohen Gadol Mekadosh B'Biyam. On the day of Yom Kippur, the Kohen Gadol is Toivel 5 times, and he does Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim, wash his hands and feet from the kier 10 times. He does it a total of 10 times that he does the Kiddush. 5 times Tefillah, 10 times Kiddush. We'll see in the Gemara why he does it so many times and where he does it. V'kulam b'kodesh al beis haparva, and all of the Tefillahs are in the Makom Kodesh. They're all in the Azora, on top of the beis haparva, on top of the chamber of the parva. Chulutz mizubovan, except the very first one, the ones we just mentioned in the Mishnah, the first one that he has to be toivel, that before he comes in, that one is outside the Azora, because you can't come into the Azora, and it is something that is done beforehand, and it's not specific to Yom Kippur. It's not part of the Yom Kippur Avodah. It's a general requirement for anybody to come into the Azora, so therefore it is not b'kodesh. Chutz mizu bilvad, except for the very first one. Parsa sudden shall boots minol beinam. So when he does the tefillah, so they spread a linen sheet between him and the people for tznius, for privacy, and he did his tefillah. Dr. Gemara, Shalu has been Zaymad, has been Zaymad Tefillah Zulama. Why do we have this first Tefillah? As the Mishnah says, even if he knows he's Torah, he still has to do this first Tefillah. So why was that requirement? Omar Lahem, he said to them, Umma Mishan Mi Kodesh LeKodesh. If one switches from one Kodesh to another Kodesh, Omi Malkim Shon, there's chorus, Lamalkim Shon, there's chorus, and from one place where there's chorus, that if a Tommy person comes in, there's a 100% of chorus, to another place where it's Kodesh, and if a person is Tommy goes in there, it's Kodesh. Meaning, the Kohen Gadol, when he switches and he does the Avodah, he does it from the Kodesh to the Kodesh Kadosh. He does it in the Azor. He goes into the Heichal. He does a switch of places where they're both Kodesh, and both places that if a person is Tommy and goes in, he'll be on his chorus for coming into these places. They're both Kodesh, and they both have this Chomer of Kedusha, yet when he switches to one of these places to the other, he has to do Tefillah. So he's Ton Tefillah for switching. He's coming here, in this case, before he enters the Azor, he's going from a place which does not have the Kedusha. It's a Malkum that's outside the Azor. Meshan Mechol to L'Kodesh. Outside the Azor, if he's Tomei, there's no punishment of chorus for being Tomei there. And if he's then coming into the Azora, where there is a punishment of chorus to come into this place because of his Kedusha, Ein Adin Shato and Tefillah, certainly Kavachomer, he should require need a Tefillah. So that is one reason. That is what Ben Zayma said. Rabbi Yehuda, he says, no, that's not the reason. Yisarach Tefillah Hizu. This is a reminder of a requirement of Tefillah. Meaning, we say you have to come in before coming to Zohar, you have to be Toivel. That will remind him, that will remind him to think about his status, to think and remind himself, oh, perhaps he's Tomei. Perhaps he is not eligible to come in. Maybe he won't be Torah until the nighttime or 7 days later if he's a Tomei Mace. It'll it'll trigger in his mind to think about his status and to dwell upon his status. Perhaps he is Tomei, and therefore prevent him, a Tomei person, from coming into the Azor, to the base of Migdash. We'll see in the next moment what is the nafkamina between these two pshatim.